Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by the Hockey Podcast Network. We are joined by a very special guest to continue breaking down Game 2 of the Pittsburgh Penguins versus New York Islanders. We welcome onto the show Smitty from around the 412. How's it going today, man?
I'm doing great, especially after Game 2. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. As me, especially after Game 2. I'm very tired and I'm yet to nap, so I'll try my best to be reading questions, and we'll be here. You know how it goes.
Horwat is now officially the lucky rabbit's foot for the Pittsburgh Penguins, so we got to get you up to Long Island, buddy.
God, do they have any good local beers?
I would imagine so. At least I would hope so. You got to ask our buddy Dave.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Dave.
But, Smitty, we're here to talk a lot about Game 2. Of course, the Penguins getting to even up the series with the New York Islanders in a huge win, only their second win of the past 3 postseasons. So a confidence booster, to say the least, for the Penguins there. But the main storyline coming out of Game 1 was Tristan Jarry. It was pretty evident that everybody was talking about his performance in Game 1 and allowing those glove side goals. But the Penguins received a boost from both Jarry and even Sidney Crosby in net in Game 2. Before we ask about Jarry, what did you think of Crosby's big save in the first?
Didn't realize it happened at first. I thought, even on the broadcast, they said it hit the post, and that's just what I thought would have happened. But, had I known it was Sidney Crosby, the one that was in position there, I would have said, no, he got his stick on it to stop it. But, yeah, just ridiculous. And it's hilarious that, just the other day, Pat McAfee brings up maybe throwing Sidney in net because Jarry might not be the guy, and then we actually do see Sidney make a save in that game. But yeah, they needed it at that time. I mean, at that point, it's a 1-0 game, and that would have tied it if he doesn't make that play. So, Captain Clutch, yet again, not just on the offensive side.
It's funny that you mentioned Pat McAfee because he had a great video of Crosby making the save with his commentary because Pat McAfee, as we know, is a phenomenal sports commentator.
Hilarious. Yeah.
But I mean, beyond, I guess, is Jarry a guy that needs to step up his game going into to the rest of the series? But what players on this team, if any, need to change up their game and improve if the Penguins want to win this series?
That's tough, man, because even Game 1, I literally, I don't want to put too much pressure on one guy, but after Game 1, I was saying literally Jarry would be the only reason this team doesn't advance past the Islanders. That's how I felt after Game 1, because I thought for the most part, I think a little bit during the third period, the Islanders, this is in Game 1, the Islanders started to dominate play a little bit. But other than that, I felt like the Penguins should have come out of Game 1 with a win. And then you look at Game 2, obviously we got off to the quick start. Brian Dumoulin makes a weird pinch, which is kind of uncharacteristic for him, and they go on a 2-on-1. And obviously, you said about Crosby making that play. Man, there's not too many guys that I think need to step their game up. Matheson, he kind of is what he is. We talk about it, for everything that he does so well on the offensive side, at times he's a roller coaster in his own end. And you just kind of take that for what it is because how good he is with the puck on his stick and everything like that. But, I would say maybe you need to see a little bit more. Jake Gensel, I think, needs to score a goal in the next game or two to get himself going. He had 2 very good chances in Game 2 and just didn't finish them. But that's, again, I'm nitpicking at this point. I really have liked the Pens play through these first 2 games. And I think that the Islanders are very fortunate to have this tied at 1.
You mentioned Jarry's performance. I did want to touch back on that really quickly about how much better he was in Game 2 and how big it was for him confidence-wise to come out in Game 2 and play that way. What did you think of his performance?
So obviously, I am a fan that wants to see a nice mix of goal scoring, good defense, good goaltending. There's a good balance there. I don't want to see 8-7 track meets every night or anything like that. But I feel obviously I would have liked to have seen another goal or 2 last night and not been on the edge of my seat for 60 minutes. But winning a 1-goal game is kind of what I feel like Tristan Jarry needed, to have his back against the wall and to make those saves down the stretch and be the one, especially after Russ takes that penalty in a 6-on-4 situation to finish out the game. Mm-hmm. You put Tristan Jarry's back against the wall and he answered the bell. And I think that that's what he needed for sure going forward. So, all the doubt that was, following him after Game 1, I think it was a huge confidence boost for everybody, to say that this was a guy that we were able to ride to victory in Game 2.
Speaking of people that road to victory in Game 2, I think the fourth line had a phenomenal game. And I think they had a somewhat quiet performance in Game 1, but in Game 2, especially with Brandon Tanev right off the jump, crushing Brock Nelson. What have you thought of their game so far this series? And do you think the Pens necessarily need them to score goals in this series to be successful?
That's interesting. I was curious as if you guys were bringing them up, because if you didn't, I was going to. Just the performance that they had, like from Mike Sullivan on home ice to get last change and say those are the guys that he wants out there against Barzal and against Jordan Eberle, who notoriously kills the Pens. I mean, that's a huge testament to those guys. I think that they're a serviceable third line, but if they're your fourth line, that's the best fourth line in hockey, without question to me. I mean, what they do defensively, like, do they need to score? If they're keeping guys like Matthew Barzal and Jordan Eberle in their own end, I don't think so. I mean, if they can just negate those guys from the game and let the other three lines go and do their thing, I think that in itself is a huge asset to this team. Guys like Teddy Bluder, Tanev, and Zach Aston-Reese, the way that they've played together, when you have those three, it's amazing, because you just take one of those guys off that line and they don't look like the same unit. But all three of those guys playing together, they are just a force. Obviously, you would like to see them chip in one, I think, here and there, especially when a guy like Evgeni Malkin isn't in the lineup. But man, they are an asset regardless of whether they're putting the puck in the net.
And Tuesday, I think the game kind of started to lend itself to their style of play. It started getting chippy. It started getting in your face, a lot of after the whistle action. But how much does it concern you that we saw players like Gensel and Crosby kind of in the thick of it there, especially Gensel at the end of the second period or first period, I believe, with Ryan Pulock? I mean, he's been getting tossed around and crushed all series long so far, and it's only been 2 games, so clearly some frustration on his part. But how much does it concern you seeing him get in the center of this kind of play?
That's a tough question to answer, because, I saw Josh Yohe put something out about this. It's like, that's the type of hockey that, your superstar is going through that and dealing with those things on a nightly basis, like Mike Sullivan lives with, because of the style of hockey he likes to coach. But for a guy like Brian Burke and maybe even Ron Hextall watching that up top last night, I'm sure that they weren't enjoying it. And that's why there's so much, talk about, is this team going to look the same next year, regardless of what the result is for them this year? Like, they want to get bigger? Do they want to get heavier? There was rumors that they would do something of that fashion at the trade deadline. And obviously it didn't happen, Jeff Carter being the one guy that they bring in. But yet to have your superstars, kind of played that way against, I don't know what the answer is to deter people from doing it. Like, even when we had a guy like Ryan Reeves here, that wasn't stopping people from taking their shots at Crosby and Malkin and the superstars of this team. So I really don't know what the answer is. It's obviously worrisome. You don't want them to continue to take those types of hits, but it's a shame that you have to have the players kind of police it as opposed to the referees, especially in the playoffs, because those guys just put the whistles away. As we saw last night, they are very reluctant to call penalties, which I'm not necessarily I don't have a problem with it as long as it's on both sides. Like, you can't be called one way and not the other. But it's a shame that, we see Gensel take that trip like he did with Sorokin, and then, Dumoulin, the hit that he took. Was that JG Pageau yesterday that put him into the boards and things like that? But I really don't know what the answer is to it.
It's funny you mentioned the Penguins not really ever having that. I mean, trying with Ryan Reeves. I think if I think back to the 2016 and 17 Cup runs, that was Ian Cole, somebody who is effective on the defensive side, but can still go out there. And he was the guy that occasionally would drop the mitts and go in kind of protection or in kind of in lieu of a star player. So I don't know what the answer is for this Penguins team. I know what Mike Sullivan wants them to do, which is just try to ignore and persevere and move on. But it seems like it's going to get increasingly harder as this series goes along.
I want to say something too, that it popped in my mind as we were talking about it. I will say that this is a group still that does stick up for their guys when things do happen. I mean, I saw a good example of it yesterday when there was, when Tanev goes into the post, and there's a little bit of a scrum afterwards. Matt Martin is about to go behind Tanev and grab him. I don't know what would have happened had he been able to do that, but Zach Aston-Reese hurries up and gets over to Matt Martin, and then they tie up and go through a little bit of a scrum. So, these guys do protect each other. In that way, they stand up for one another. It's just like you said, you don't have a presence that's necessarily willing to just drop the mitts anytime when somebody does go after a superstar player.
Yeah, and with all that being said, I mean, the series now shifts to playing at Nassau Coliseum, the old barn that's basically made of concrete. What are your thoughts on playing on the road in Nassau? And do you believe there is a noticeable difference with the Islanders playing playoff hockey in that building versus Barclays or something?
That's a good question. I'm curious as to what their record is as of late between those two buildings. But I have a question. Do they even have a Zamboni that operates there? Because it seems like as soon as the game starts, the ice is terrible. So I have no idea.
80s. I mean, it's
yeah. The only thing that I'm curious about, and it's not necessarily the environment or anything like that, how different does it look with the Islanders getting last change now? Because we've seen, like I said, how the Penguins have been able to match up with Barzal and Eberle with the Bluder line, so does Trotz want to get away from that? And does he deploy them against the Crosby line, thinking that he's going to get a better result? I mean, the fact that they were able to neutralize that line with the Bluder line, I think it makes life very tough for the Islanders now trying to figure out how to put that line and deploy that line out against them. I think that Pelech and Pollock are one of the best, defensive pairings that nobody talks about. I thought the Penguins actually had a pretty decent night against them yesterday. So I'm very curious again. For me, it's all about how do the Islanders operate now that they have the last change. It's not necessarily the environment that I'm worried about. I wouldn't say it's necessarily anything I'm worried about. I mean, if the Penguins can get the same results that they did in these first two games, and Tristan Jarry just be more of the game 2 version that we saw than the game 1 version, I really I don't see a way that the Islanders can beat the Penguins. And I know that might be a bold statement, but I'm putting it out there right now. I've seen very good hockey from the Penguins, and what you want to see, they're playing the exact opposite way of the way that they did in 2019. They have guys that can break the puck out. That was the biggest, difference to me. Is you don't have guys like Jack Johnson and Eric Goodbranson. You have at least one guy in each of these defensive pairings that can break the puck out of your own zone. And, that's honestly, when people ask me about Tristan Jarry, that's my favorite thing about him is his puck handling ability. He's almost like a third defenseman back there with being able to break the puck out.
Yeah, it's quite interesting watching Jarry, especially. He also does the thing where he'll make the save and immediately try to bat it out of the air. I think that is. Have you noticed that one? Like it's the rebound.
He likes to use his stick.
Yeah, he's a very active goalie in that way. So we'll have to see. I mean, do you think it is the last ride for the Islanders at Nassau? Do you think this is it? This is these last games?
So I still have this series go. Are all three are 3, 4, and 6 all slated to be played there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I have this series going 6. I still think the Islanders take one of these. I think it's tied after 4 games, so I think that the Penguins and Islanders split these next 2, and then the Penguins win the following 2. Right. So I say game 6. That's the last ride for them there.
And a big factor in that will be Evgeni Malkin. Do you think he plays at all this round?
So I already brought him up once. I got to bring him up again. I had a conversation with Josh Yohe at game 1, just ran into him walking through the concourse. And it wasn't just me, I was with a couple other people, but we were asking him about what his insight was into the Evgeni Malkin situation. Cause it's weird because he's practicing every day, but then not doing line rushes. Where exactly is he? He thinks he returns this round. I've been a little bit skeptical of that. The fact that he is traveling with the team. So he said game 4 is his prediction for when he returns. I don't know if he's going, based off anything or if that's just a complete guess. But I mean, you watch these videos of him, it doesn't he's taking some contact. I've seen Colton Sevier bumping him against the wall. Mm-hmm. But even in the games that he returned, and I know that he's still trying to get his feet wet at that point, you don't see a full speed Evgeni Malkin. And I think this is going to be something that regardless of if he comes back or if he doesn't, he's going to be playing through, and it's not going to be healed until next season completely. I will say I do think he returns, and I'll trust Josh Yohe when I say this. I do think that he returns a little bit later. I don't think he's back for game 3. I think you could see him for game 4.
At which point do the Penguins really need Evgeni Malkin to be back in the lineup? I mean, they've played fairly well without him in this series, but I personally said that they can beat the Islanders, but past that, you're going to need him in the lineup to go any further than that. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. I mean, whether it's Washington or Boston, I think that you want to have a guy like him in the lineup. Especially, I look at Boston, and I've talked about this so many times, but I am so mad at Buffalo for just handing them Taylor Hall, because at that point, before that trade, Boston is a one-line team. Granted, it's a very good line, but that perfection line is really all they had. I mean, David Krejci wasn't scoring goals. Craig Smith wasn't scoring goals. They get Taylor Hall, and all of a sudden they have at least 2 lines that can score because of what he's done to also improve the games of David Krejci and Craig Smith. But that's the thing is you look at Pittsburgh and Boston, how they match up. Boston has done a phenomenal job of neutralizing Pittsburgh's top line. And that's when all of a sudden the presence of Evgeni Malkin becomes that much more important, because if the Crosby line isn't going to be able to have that same offensive impact as they normally do, because the Bergeron line is negating them, you need to have Evgeni Malkin and his connection with Kasperi Kapanen in the lineup to be able to provide that secondary offense for you that you're not getting from that top line. If it's Washington, they're a little bit, I think, top to bottom deeper than Boston is. Granted, they don't have Kuznetsov right now. That's a weird situation still out on the COVID list. So I don't know when he's going to be back. But he would add another element for that team as well. And I think that they're deeper top to bottom than Boston is. And I think Pittsburgh's, deeper top to bottom as well. So that would be a very interesting matchup, and one that I would again say it would be all the more important to have Evgeni Malkin back if we match up with them. So either way, regardless of who we play, I think he either gives you an advantage because you become a deeper forward group than what Boston has, or you can at least match up better with Washington with Evgeni Malkin in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that series pretty well. I mean, aside from the Pittsburgh series, which opening round series are you watching the closest? And, also aside from that, which one has been the most entertaining so far?
Going into it, I would have said I am deeply invested in the Florida series, the Florida-Tampa Bay series, the Battle of Florida matchup in the playoffs for the first time. But Florida has been a mess in their own end. They didn't get the goaltending in game one either. They make the switch there, and then their defense is terrible, and they completely get shut down with the way that they want to play offense by Tampa, because they rely on speed and space, and Tampa just took it all away from them in game two. So I honestly, I thought that series would go 7. I'm not even sure if it gets to 6 now. But I would say, obviously invested in Boston, Washington too, seeing who we would potentially play in a round 2. And both those games going to overtime as well. That's been a great series to watch. Now I'm just interested, is it Craig Anderson the rest of the way for Washington or what? Because if that's the case, I'm probably picking Boston to win that series. Craig Anderson can steal a game every now and then for you, but when he's bad, he is bad. So I think Boston, if Craig Anderson has to be the goalie for the rest of the way for Washington, I think Boston comes out of that series.
All right, and I will wrap this up with a very fun question, because you made some noise on Twitter last night. So the Penguins tweeted about a pair of...
Oh, you guys saw that?
A little bit. The Penguins tweeted about a pair of girls that came in from Hawaii into town to watch the game. You shot your shot and responded with just nothing but your phone number.
Yep.
What was the thought process behind that? How has the reaction been? And most importantly, have you received a text yet?
So let's break this down step by step. Initial thought, there was no initial thought. I have no idea what I was thinking when I did that. I just thought it'd be funny. I probably should have used either a fake number or some type of meme where it's somebody handing them their credit card or something like that I've seen before. Mm-hmm. But it was legitimately my phone number that I put out there. I received probably 25 or so texts. I had a couple people add me on Snapchat. I got a couple voicemails that I woke up to. Man, I'll be honest though, I was having fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very fun night on Twitter. And it made it more fun, obviously, at the Pens one as well, because otherwise it probably would have been kind of miserable. But them getting the good result, and then my phone just blowing up. The good thing is iPhone does have a setting where if people call me, if it's from a number I don't have, it just goes directly to voicemail. So my phone wasn't blowing up in that regard. But yeah, like I said, I probably got 25 or so texts. The cool thing is people were being so cool about it. They were literally just saying, "Let's go Pens. Good luck." Had a couple people text me from Canada. Yeah. I don't think I got a text from anybody in Hawaii, though, so that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, some of my favorite responses were, I mean, I don't know if you know these people, but the thanks for letting borrow your Maserati, that was a good one. Mm-hmm. Just some of the memes that were great. It's big horny online. Yeah, I'm just reading them down now. There were some very good ones. And it gave some good entertainment for me sitting in the crowd, trying to not be nervous and not be super drunk at the game.
Oh, that's right. You were at the game. So, yeah, I'm sure it was good. It was good to kind of take your mind away from that for a little bit and be able to focus on that. But, yeah, dude, that was probably one of the more wild nights that I've had on Twitter. All the responses, like you said, were great. Yeah. It just kind of – I was creating a thread, too, of the text that I was getting for a while as well. Someone sent me a text about getting checked for HIV or something like I was getting some that were kind of like that, but like I said, most of the people were I got 3 people just sent me a picture of Phil Kessel.
Yep, all right.
Yeah. But no, I did not hear from either of the chicks from Hawaii, so
Not yet. Give it time. I'm also a little surprised because of how that whole Arizona situation happened with the date.
That did cross my mind.
I was waiting for the Penguins to jump in with something like that. I thought that would have been funny too.
No, dude, like, listen, I love the Penguins. I love all the Pittsburgh teams. The social media teams, man, they're not the best. Put me in. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to roll.
They have their moments.
Horwat, you know what you should have did? You were at the game. You should have played wingman for me. You should have went down there, laid the groundwork and the foundation. Right. Come on.
I didn't think what I do about it.
I know a couple other people that were at the game as well, and that didn't cross my mind. Now I got some text to send of my own to reach out to people and say, what were we thinking?
There you go. Before we let you go, we can't let you get out of here without a prediction for Game 3. Who do you think wins? Do you have a score prediction? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, I got a score prediction. All right. So, I said I was going to be in bold by saying that I think that this series ends in 6 and that I think that they're split after 4. I can never pick the Penguins to lose a game, though. Like, even though I'm obviously saying that they're going to lose at least one more in this series, it's not going to be in Game 3. I think that the Penguins ride this momentum of Game 2. Tristan Jarry stays sharp. The one thing about him, man, is which you have to love is the way that he bounces back when he does have a poor performance. And even though, Sullivan stuck up for him and say that he thought he was fine and made some great saves for the team in that Game 1, he knew that he was the reason that they didn't come away with a better result. So he always answers the bell. And I think that, he just kind of rides this momentum now that he's got his confidence back. And I'll say that the Penguins win Game 3 4-2.
Okay. 4-2. Okay. Do you see the first line? And you said Gensel needs to get a goal.
Gensel's scoring. I think he's been knocking on the door. Like I said, he had 2 very good scoring chances. Actually, 2 of the better high danger scoring chances in the game. In Game 2, I think that Game 3 is where he finally buries one, and then I think you got to watch out because we know that he scores in bunches. Once he sees one go into the back of the net, I mean, he might score a hat trick tomorrow. He might get 3 of the 4 that I'm saying they're going to score. Because he's a streak scorer, and like I said, when he gets one, the ball just gets rolling for him. So I think that he does get one tomorrow, and then we see a little bit of a hot streak from Gensel, and I think that we see Sid just rack up those primary assists as well for the rest of the series.
That would certainly be a welcome sign for the Pittsburgh Penguins and a good sign going into a hopeful round 2. But Smitty, before we let you go, we want to hear from you. What's coming up for around the 412? What's coming up for you? If there's anything else personally, and just speak to us. Tell us what's coming up.
Yeah, so around the 412, you can follow us at around the 412. We do a weekly show, which is actually going to be. When do you guys put this out? On Thursday. Okay, so we will have already recorded our show. We'll put the show out tomorrow because we record the same day as you guys. But nothing this week. The only thing that we have really like planned Pens wise, we do a weekly show, Box and Puck show. But as far as like an interview or anything like that, all I can say is our boy Brian Rust will be back on as soon as the Penguins playoffs conclude. Hopefully that's with him winning the 3rd Stanley Cup. He's a great guy. We love interacting with him. We talk to him actually pretty frequently at this point. We got one of our boys who's an artist actually drawing up a picture of him with a mustache. Even though he's not a huge fan of that himself, by the way. He just does it because the team loves it. It's going to be great. So stay on the lookout for that. We're going to have I don't know if you watch this. Hopefully he does. But say he's not watching this at the very moment, I will let you guys in on something. He doesn't know about this picture yet, and we're going to reveal it to him on the show. So.
Oh, all righty. Well, that's definitely going to be a must watch. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you giving us your time, and hopefully the Pens do exactly what you say.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.